Watch out, Cobra. Fridge is coming through.
Yo, Joe!
Well, what sorcery is this? Is that a G.I. Joe classified scaled figure of the Fridge? Alright, let's talk about it.
Don't mess with me, I'm the refrigerator man. I'm the refrigerator man. I'm the refrigerator man.
I'll start by saying that this is a custom figure, yet also mention that it's a totally doable one even if you're like me and don't normally spend a lot of time painting up or modifying your toys. The key thing you'll need is the Gridiron Studios ICEBOX loadout, and from there, most of what you need is done, and the rest, including which base figure to use for the loadout, becomes a matter of preference. By the way, for my regular viewers, I do have a question. A few have told me that they prefer the blank white background when I'm doing these sorts of videos, but some prefer some sort of color, even if it's a basic cardboard background like this. Let me know in the comments what you prefer, but for the purpose of this video, I will alternate between the two. Now for a bit of history. William Perry was drafted by the Chicago Bears in 1985. The Bears would be the team that he'd spend the majority of his career and would be where he won the Super Bowl in 1986, triumphing over the New England Patriots. This was of course long before the Patriots' own dynasty years featuring big names such as Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski. Perry got the nickname of the Refrigerator or simply the Fridge during his college football years when a fellow player could barely fit into an elevator with Perry when they were taking their laundry to be washed, and noted that Perry was as big as a refrigerator. The Fridge would be listed at 6'2" and 335 pounds during his NFL years after he was drafted, though in his college pre-draft years he was listed as weighing even more than this. He'd play the position of defensive tackle, though at times was used for running the ball offensively, such as the historic touchdown he had at the aforementioned Super Bowl 20 back in 1986. The man was a natural celebrity and even had his own theme song. The Fridge's fame naturally crossed over into other forms of media. By the spring of 1986, he'd find himself competing at WrestleMania 2 in the 20-man wrestling football battle royal. It was there where he'd find himself in a bit of a showdown with Big John Studd. By 1987, this is where we'd get the first action figure of the Fridge as a G.I. Joe mail-away offer. He was the second real-life personality to make his way into the G.I. Joe line, as Sergeant Slaughter had done this just prior to the Fridge joining G.I. Joe. That said, unlike the Sarge, the Fridge doesn't license his rights nor his likeness on any ongoing basis, so the 1987 mail-away, for the most part, is the only option for collectors to get a widely distributed figure of him. And whether you're a fan of William the Refrigerator Perry as an NFL player back in the day, or you first heard about him as a G.I. Joe figure, well, either way, let's talk about this custom figure right now. The first thing you'll want to do is find a base figure. For the body, I had a G.I. Joe classified Cobra Island roadblock, which I asked my good friend Peter at Sparkplug Customs to paint up the pants and the torso for. He also did some dry brushing work on the boots to make it look a little bit different. I'll point out though that with a torso like this, the number 72, which Perry wore during his days in the NFL, can look a bit funny depending on how you position the torso. Ultimately, that'll be different from, say, how Bazooka looks with his jersey number, which has a different style of torso cut on it. But the figure's number for the Fridge will mostly be covered by the Gridiron gear. Note as well that I've put away most of the Cobra Island Roblox gear, including the head, because the way it is shaped won't lend itself well to the snug Gridiron football helmet. The shoulder padding will take a little bit of work to stretch, or you could heat it up to get it to fit. The back piece also comes off, which is a cool added feature. Now, looking at the other gear and moving on to the helmet, you'll need to unplug the face mask in order to fit a figure's head inside, so we'll go ahead and give that a try when we get to that step. As mentioned, the padding will have to be stretched carefully or heated if you prefer, and then you just fit and wiggle it onto the base figure and then adjust it a little bit to get it to fit properly. Unfortunately, I did scuff the paint a little on both the front as well as the backside, but I'll be leaving the gear on so it won't be too big of an issue. I also had a spare figure of the earlier version for classified Roadblock, so the best thing to do is to change the head out and put it onto the custom figure. Of course, all of this is optional and you can use the Gridiron gear on a different base figure and head sculpt if you prefer. Since we'll be using a mask and a football helmet, which we'll put on as described earlier, you can't really see his face, so it could really be any football player in this loadout. But with the color scheme of the figure and Gridiron intentionally making the gear like this, most G.I. Joe collectors will just assume that it's the Fridge. Because of the way his loadout is, you have a few options for putting his gear into his hands, or with how you would stow the gear away onto his back. What you'll find is that either weapon can be stored properly, and you can also clip the ammo belt in a manner to be tucked away neatly onto the figure's back and out of the way when you put your Fridge on display with your other classified figures. In terms of storing everything, you've also got the holster on the front, and his signature football flail can either be put into his hands like it was done for the vintage figure, or you can also put that onto his back for storage. Here's a look at the figure next to the original 1987 vintage mail-away, and I'd say it's a reasonable update. You can notice the homage right away, all without using the likeness of William Perry himself, yet still knowing who it's supposed to be for the purpose of your classified collection. In terms of that overall collection, here's how he looks next to Sergeant Slaughter, who's the other real-life Joe, of course. Here's him next to an earlier version of Duke that's been kitted out with the Gridiron Studios Command loadout. And you can see various shots of him here with other Joes, just to get an idea of how he looks when displayed among the good guy ranks. You can then see here how he looks with the villains, and I think it's overall just fair to say that I'd happily recommend this loadout to viewers of this channel. Again, feel free to get creative with whatever you decide to use for the base figure, and like with most Gridiron Studios items, you may have to get over a little bit of sticker shock when it comes to the price, but I can honestly say that it brings a smile to my face to see this figure with this loadout in my collection. Ultimately, I'm not quite sure what else I can add, because a picture is really worth 1,000 words here. The whole idea was to present my own experiences and reactions to owning this figure as is, and you can tell me in the comments section below what your thoughts of this figure and this loadout are. Anyway, if you happen to like this video, I'm going to put another Gridiron Studios related video that you can click on right over here, or for a look at the vintage G.I. Joe year that the Fridge made his debut in the G.I. Joe line, you can click right over here. Otherwise, yo Joe, and I'll see y'all next time. Thanks again, and take care.